One of the unfortunate things about this crisis is that it happened during my favorite season to be in Paris. I love the spring in Paris. In fact, May, that is almost over, is actually one of my favorite months. And if you want to know why, you can look outside and see just how beautiful it is here. You come out of those difficult, cold winter months into a new dawning where flowers bloom, where people can go to parks. And up until this point, these parks have been closed. But the seasons change. And you go through difficult things for a period, and then sometimes things get better. Sometimes things get harder. Sometimes it changes. And I think it's helpful to think of life in terms of changing seasons. This past season that we've been experiencing together as a church and as a world has been very strange. It's been mixed with emotions, some sadness over the difficulties and sufferings that many of our friends have had to go through. Some have gone through those things and had fear and worry. There has been certain joys that have accompanied it as we've had more time and more time with family, more time to do new things. Perhaps you've picked up a new hobby. There's been lots of interesting things about this past season of quarantine. But the season's changing. People are starting to go outside and new freedoms are opening up. And while things are not back to normal yet, we can certainly say that things are changing. And so for us as a church, we have to think through, what does the new season look like for EIC? As we have come out of a very specific time where our worship has been all done online. You have watched me do Facebook live sermons, watch Pastor KJ. We've had new videos and had conference calls, Corona care groups that meet by Zoom meetings. It has been an interesting time. And I think a profitable time. And I, for one, know that I will look back on this past season, these past couple of months of quarantine with fond memories, with church memories even, of how we have invested in each other during this time. But the season's changing, and the church needs to change too. Now, the mission of the church hasn't changed, but how we are going to accomplish it must. And it is a difficult thing to think through. And our church leadership had a meeting this morning where we talked through all the complexities of what do we do next. We have so many biblical principles to consider when we think about what the church should look like going forward. We have to think about the safety of our members, which is of the utmost importance. We have to think about obedience to the authorities and the regulations that are still there. Most importantly, we have to think about the mission of God. And it is that I want to emphasize today, because we have a tendency, I think, sometimes to think that all of this that's going around us represents problems, as if God was not sovereign over the affairs of the world, and as if he didn't have a plan for our church during this season. So I would say that the problems that we are having to solve are not regrettable problems. They're problems that are put there by God. God is sovereign. He's not surprised by what is happening. And so the question for us, what does church look like in the next season, is a question God wants us to ask. And he's going to be faithful to us as we are faithful to him. So what will it look like? Well, we did decide this morning that we do not have a date set for going back to the building and do not plan on doing that right now. There are simply too many risks associated with being in our building right now. From transportation issues and frankly, the things that we normally love to do together in a church represent some of the riskiest things that people are warning us about concerning the spread of the virus. So we decided that now is not the time to go back to our building on Sunday morning. Nevertheless, it is a changing season, and it is time for us to meet together, person to person, body to body, people together, the church together, beyond just what is happening online. So what we want to do as a church, we're going to call church in the park. Church in the park. Why? Because being outdoors really minimizes all of the risk associated with the virus. It's a way for us to be with each other and to be on mission at the same time. So the plan, beginning on June 14th, is that we will have 5 locations for Roué. In turn, is also going to have its own program. 5 locations, 2 in Roué, 2 in Paris, and 1 in Saint-Germain-en-Laye, of church members meeting together in parks, outdoors, to be able to worship together. On Sundays, we will continue to have our online Facebook Live sermon that we will post. And after that sermon, on Sundays, we will meet together in the parks to have the same kind of format that we've had in the Corona Care groups. We will discuss the sermon that we watched that morning, and then we will have time of prayer together, of fellowship, of enjoying with each other. And since we are out in the world, since we are out in the parks and in the community, we will have a missional focus, being able to be with people, meet people, have conversations about Jesus with others, take our church to the parks. So on June 14th, we will have our first meetings like this, and there'll be more information coming. You might have a question about the Corona Care groups, and I'm so thankful for our Corona Care groups. I'm thankful for the relationships I've made with the people in ours. And we recognize that some will want to continue this. The Corona Care groups as a whole strategy will be ending on June 14th. But that does not mean that some groups can't continue to meet, especially if you live in a situation where you're unable to get to the parks to meet together. And so in your next meeting with your Corona Care leaders, they will talk to you about whether you want to continue in the online meeting format through Zoom. And those who want to continue to do that, we will have a group that continues to do that. So there will be an opportunity to do that going forward. But the church meetings in person will take place in parks across town. It'll be a chance for us to be the communities of light that the city of lights need. That's one of the phrases we often hear Pastor KJ says, that we want to, as a church, litter the city of lights with communities of light. What a great opportunity we have right now to do that, to do church differently. So why would we want to risk being in a building when this present season gives us a unique opportunity? I want you to look back 20 years from now during this upcoming season and say, wow, God did some special things in our church and in my life through church in the park. We have a church planting vision here at EIC. Littering the city of lights with community of lights. What better way to get out there to meet new people than to have church in the park? Our vision statement is as follows. We are a thankful church in Paris, worshiping Jesus, trusting the Bible, believing the gospel, loving the city. Far from this being some defensive reaction against the waves of the sea that we're tossed through and fro by. This is an intentional plan of God, and we have an intentional way to carry out our vision through this strategy. In the coming season, we will be no less a thankful church in Paris. We'll look at the events. We'll see the opportunities that we have to be a church, to invest in each other, and we will be thankful. We'll worship Jesus during this time because Jesus can be worshiped anywhere by a Christian. The Holy Spirit lives in our hearts, and we carry Him around with us as we go. We can worship Jesus from a park just as easily as we can worship Jesus from a building. Worshiping Jesus continues to be one of the focus of our vision statement. We're a church that trusts the Bible. And if we look into the Bible and want to trust it, we can see that changing world is part of how the church must respond. I'm reminded of the story in Acts of the beginning of the church at Philippi. It's very similar to what we're doing. They found a group of people praying beside a river, and they shared the gospel with them, and a church was started, a famous church. There was a letter written to this church, a beloved church that participated in the mission to see the gospel go to the nations. What if God did something like that through us in the coming months. We're a church that believes the gospel. And no matter where we meet, this is an unchanging thing. The gospel is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. God has called us to be ambassadors of this gospel, to be representatives, to proclaim the gospel to the nations, to believe it and let it change our hearts, and through the way it changes us, change the world. This is, again, entirely possible in a completely new way in the coming season we're entering in. And the final statement in our vision statement is that we are a church that loves the city. This is a chance for us to love the city like never before. We get to go out there into the neighborhoods with the people and love each other and love Jesus in a visible way for all the world to see. Let them see the joy that we have in Jesus. EIC is a thankful church in Paris, worshiping Jesus, trusting the Bible, believing the gospel, loving the city. And in the coming season, we're going to live out that vision in the parks, outside, with each other. I pray that you'll embrace this vision. I pray that you'll be excited as I am about what church will look like as we go out into our communities and love each other. I pray that you will approach this. I pray that you'll approach going to the parks in the same way that you would approach going to church. And certainly there are logistical difficulties in thinking through this. And certainly if there's a safety concern that you and your family have, we want you to guard your family based on your convictions. But we want you to be committed to the church, because I need the Jesus in you just as much as you need the Jesus in me. We need the Jesus in each other. And in the coming season, we believe as a church, this is going to take place at Church in the Park. Stay tuned for more information about the specifics of this. New logistical announcements will be made in the coming days. On Friday of next week, Pastor KJ and I are going to do another podcast. And the focus of this podcast that we will put on Facebook and on YouTube is talking through the reasoning that went behind these decisions. We want you to understand and be excited for the coming season and the opportunities that it's bring to experience church and to be a church in an entirely new way. And for my life, an unprecedented way. I've never done anything like this before, but I'm excited to do it with you. God, who is sovereign over the events of the world, we believe is leading us into a new and exciting season. Church in the Park. Thank you.